Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Joined by, if not the most, one of the most conservative members of the Idaho legislature, State Representative Heather Scott joins us this morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm living the dream. What's it like in the swamp? We still have, and by the way, we love the hat that you gave us a few years ago, Drain the Swamp, Idaho. We still have it hanging in our studio here, and everybody always asks us, and I say, well, that's Representative Scott's hat. So what's the progress in Boise?
Well, it is a swamp, and as you know, we've been trying to muck it out for the last 4 years and going on the fifth year down there, and some of the process is broken. That's what I see. But we've worked pretty hard to try to get our bills to be heard, get committee chairmen to stop, sitting on bills. And some of that has been fixed to a point on the House side. What we're starting to see, and we saw it at the end of last year, is we had some good bills that passed through the House, and it just happened over again on the Senate side. So we're about at that spot now. We've had some good bills pass the House side. They're still waiting to get hearings in committees on the Senate side. And I'm hopeful, but not very optimistic, just from some of the stuff I've seen. But we'll find out more by the end of this week where things are.
Well, Representative Scott, there was a movie called, now this is, I'm a many years older than you, so there's a movie called Star Wars, and who's winning, the Rebel Alliance or the Empire?
Well, the Empire's always here, and they're more organized, they got a lot of staff, so I'd have to say the Empire's always a little 2 steps ahead. That doesn't mean they can't be beat. It just means they're 2 steps ahead of us.
As someone who has been elected and reelected and been through the process, how big of an influence are the lobbyists there? We have our friend Tea Party Bob talk about it and others, but you're there all the time. People make a lot of allegations concerning the influence of lobbyists, like in any form of government. You see it firsthand. What's your firsthand insight there?
So they have a lot of influence, and some of it's their fault and some of it's not. You got to remember, everyone down here in session is here for 3 months. So they're just common people. They're, farmers, they're school bus drivers, teachers. So they come down here. They're not experts on all these topics we're voting on. And so they rely on anyone that can help them get the information quickly and concisely. So I do see a role for lobbyists because they're just citizens that have stepped up and organized and are pushing their issue. And so they provide information for the legislators, which is important. The problem is, the money that follows that. And something I found out just yesterday that someone told me and I had no idea, but they're flying legislators around the country and the world. And I haven't got all the details on it yet, but legislators may be shipped to, obviously not the Liberty legislators, because we might tell, but to Hawaii, to Turkey, all these countries around the world. Hawaii's not a country, but that disturbed me when I found that out yesterday. So that being said, lobbyists do have a big role. I have a bill sitting in committee right now that will not be heard until I get a buy-on by 4 lobby groups. And that's being told to me by a chairman. I think that's unacceptable. I think that's unacceptable totally. So,
Representative Heather Scott joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, Representative Scott, let me hit you with the big one. Where's the repeal of the grocery tax?
What's that?
We
What are you
laugh
talking
because
about?
that's all we can do. But you remember on the campaign trail, you were out those Lincoln days. We're going to repeal the grocery tax and mark me if I'm elected or reelected. That's the first thing we're going to do.
Until you're told you can't do it.
Yeah.
Or you're told that, and I do think there's a bill out there and it's not being heard. So there, yeah, I hear you. That's no wonder people are so sick of politicians, and it's easy to blame your representatives, but there are some key holdups in the system that suppress the voice of the of your representatives.
Well, who are they?
Well, we can start with committee chairmen. They have a lot of control over that system on whether bills will be heard or not heard. And this is control that I don't think the system was designed to do this, but it's control that's been allowed through tradition, through years and years of workings in the system, and to where it's just expected that they can do this. And, I always go back to the complete basics. All power is in the people. It's not in your elected officials. It's not in your committee chairman. But the citizens, they don't understand the system. They don't know where to put pressure on in the system. And they get frustrated, quite frankly, with the system. So and half the citizens in, like my district, all my citizens are 9 hours away. So it's really hard to put pressure where you need to put it when you do have the power if you exercise it.
State Representative Heather Scott joining us, the conservative firebrand that has garnered headlines locally, nationally, across the country. Of course, I knew of her when she was thinking about running and making a big difference. For those folks that, we take it for granted because we live here in the Treasure Valley, but what do you guys do on your off time? I would imagine it must be terribly frustrating, terribly lonely to be here 3 months out of the year.
Yes. So you mean my off time when I'm down here for 3 months?
Yeah, and I understand you're putting in the time, but you have to sleep. You're not sleeping in your home. You have to eat. Yeah, I don't know if they have the cantina down there, but you know what I'm saying.
So all legislators are given a per diem. So if you live far away, you get $139 a day, and with that, you need to provide your own housing and food. Everyone that I know of that lives up north, they rent a place. I rent a apartment down here in Boise for 3 months, and so that's kind of what you do. You live here for 3 months. Now the state pays for people to go home every weekend. Besides your per diem, they will pay you your actual cost to fly home on the weekends. I go home maybe once every 3 weeks. Some people go home every weekend. It just depends on the person. Some people have small kids at home. They probably need to be there with their kids. That's their number one responsibility, or it should be. So that's kind of just part of the sacrifice. I guess it's you're a public servant. It can't be fun and games. Right.
Well, no, I'm with you. I'm sure it's not like Animal House after hours, but it just, to me, it seems very tough, and we don't really recognize the sacrifice going on. What do you say to people that are frustrated, though, that say, every year it's the bait and switch, every year it's the bait and switch, and I'm sure you hear it from your constituents and other people's constituents here in the Treasure Valley, ma'am.
So I think the biggest advice that I would give, especially down here where things are packed in tight with citizens, number one, you have to know your representatives and your senator. There's 3 of them that represent you. If you don't have a personal relationship with them, they're not going to listen to you when you call them. If you don't establish a relationship with those representatives, when you call and say, I demand you don't pass Marcy's law, they're going to say, who are you? So the first thing I would do is reach out to the people that represent you and meet with them. on the off time. I don't know if you could do it this time of year, but get to know them because they're voting. They're voting. And then I would build teams of citizens that are like-minded, kind of like the lobbyists do, to watch them. I mean, we have lobbyists for everything except liberty. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have the Idaho Freedom Foundation. We have Madison Liberty Group. But they are more, they're focused on policy, and which is good. But I would organize as citizens in your district, because that's the only people that your legislators are going to listen to. When I get the liberals from Boise that call in and tell me to add the 4 words or the 6 or 10 words, I just don't put much weight on it because they're not my people. I mean, do you know what I mean?
I do. Our great friend, Representative Heather Scott, joining us. Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. KIDO Talk Radio. Recently, it just got out of committee. I think it's going back to committee. Big headlines coming up concerning Medicaid expansion. It's been funded. Now you have a proposal that would put a cap on it. You have a proposal that would add work requirements to it. How big an issue is this in the legislature right now? Is this the granddaddy of them all?
Well, you would think so, but there hasn't been much talk about it. What I've seen this year is they're just moving through the bills as fast as possible. Haven't seen any Medicaid bills yet. Nothing. So I think one just hit committee this week. They've saved the big daddy for last. So I think there'll be conversations on it. But, in my opinion, it'll probably be an orchestrated circus. It'll all get worked out before it hits the House floor because they're not going to bring a bill up that they don't know they've got the votes for. That's just my suspicion. So there'll be conversations on it coming up, but right now we're just hitting all the appropriations. I mean, I think we had 35 bills on the calendar yesterday. We met 3 times yesterday. We met at 10:30. We met at 1:15, and then we met again at 4 just to vote on bills. So they're ramming a lot of bills through, and I think saving the big daddy for last.
Kind of like what they did with the gas tax.
You betcha, because people get tired, they want to go home, they can get worn out, and they just say, mercy, right? It's only the strong people that will fight it out to the end, and not a lot of people have that kind of I don't know what the word is, but not that many people have that type of fight in them. They just give up pretty easily.
Well, one issue that has hit a road bump is the controversial constitutional amendment, Marsy's Law. You're right in the middle of this. Looks like it's going back to committee. You obviously support and love and protect the Second Amendment. You had it get out of the Senate, then it hit a huge road bump. Your thoughts on Marsy's Law and the idea that we could incrementally be endorsing red flag laws here in the Gem State?
Well, I just keep telling people, look at the Kavanaugh case. We all watched that, and that lady kept saying she was a victim. She was a victim. That's kind of what we're going to see with Marsy's Law is what I see. It has the potential. Everyone that claims they're a victim is a victim, and they're going to demand rights. And I'm sure Representative Zito shared with you a few years ago when the Marsy's Law executive branch or executive people that worked for them came and they said, as soon as we get this in the Constitution, then we can push back. And we're like, number one, who is we? And what do you mean push back? And it's a team of lawyers that they're going to bring in and start suing these rural counties. This is what I see, for not providing the standards, reasonable standards, whatever those may be. I do think it's a backdoor to gun confiscation, and I also think it takes away people's due process. You do not have a victim until you have a crime, a crime that's been adjudicated. So I just don't. I'm against it. And I thought it was a big deal that the guy got busted for drug trafficking, the Nicholas guy behind this, but it turns out he has a long rap sheet. It's not just that. He's got busted for drugs in the past before the last year's incident. He's got caught for having prostitutes and drugs in a tunnel underneath his house. He's got caught for spiking people's drinks. He's got a long rap sheet. And so I just can't understand why Idaho legislators would let someone like that take the lead to change our Constitution in our state. It baffles me.
Representative Heather Scott joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Finally, you take a look at this controversy involving the lieutenant governor, the 3%ers, the real 3%ers. You know these folks. Your thoughts?
It's a joke. Who reads the papers? That's what I keep saying. Everyone listens to radio. People get it. People have given up on a newspaper. They're just looking for controversy to sell their papers, and nobody's buying them. And anyone that knows Janice knows she's a great gal. She'll meet with anyone. And this is Betsy Russell tactics, in my opinion. It's just she did the same stuff to me. She tried to tie every move I made to racism or white nationalism, and quite frankly, it's on the edge of slander and libel. And I think the papers need to be careful because they're going to push it one time too many, and someone's going to push back. And it's a joke to me. It's just a joke. And people that know Janice, and that's all I can say. And I've gained a lot of respect for her since spending more time with her in the Capitol. She is a great patriot. She's great to work with. She cares about the people, and that scares the system. I mean, they want people that care about the system more than the citizens. Janice cares about the citizens, and that's very obvious in her behavior and everything she does. So,
Representative Scott, we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I don't know if I have time, but I'd sure like to talk about a CPS bill, Child Protective Service bill, that I ran.
Can you hang on?
Sure can.
All right. And then we'll take your calls. We know we have a young man by the name of Rick in Nampa that wants to speak. A lot going on this morning. You're listening to Kevin Miller, Waking Up on the Right Side, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Quickly back to Representative Heather Scott. We've got a couple minutes. They're yours to promote this bill, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to let your listeners know about a bill which would require Child Protective Services to hand you a form when they come to the door to let you know that your rights as a citizen. What I found out with the research of this is Child Protective Services, the Health and Welfare Department, they're pretty much out of control in this state. But they are visiting homes. They're getting about 23,000 calls a year, and they're visiting about 10,000 homes. When they go to these homes, they're basically trying to get into the house. They're trying to find out people's philosophies on parenting. They're taking pictures of the house. And 8,000 of these cases are unfounded because Idaho has mandatory reporting if you suspect. So anybody can report anybody with a child, and they have to look into it. So I guess this is in the Senate now. Keep an eye out for it. I guess know your rights as a parent. When Child Protective Services come to your door, they have got to have consent to come in. They have to have a warrant, or they have to have probable cause that your child is in imminent danger, or they cannot come into your home. And I just am fearful that many parents don't know their rights, so they're losing their rights. I have audio of a CPS employee telling a constituent they had more rights than the police. They would get a judge if they wouldn't let them in the home, but this person knew their constitutional rights and didn't allow it. So I just want to give your listeners a heads up, because if this doesn't pass, I'm going to really work hard to educate people on what's happening in our state where their rights are being violated because parents don't know their rights with their kids.
Thank you, Representative Scott. You have a great day.
Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you. Good morning, Rick. Thanks for your patience on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Kevin. And my purpose is to point out that these battles that we're facing right now have roots that go very deep. For example, Charles Porter published a book back in 1930 called Humanism, A New Religion. And this new religion of secular humanism has infiltrated our educational system from the kindergarten on up, and it's very deeply entrenched in United Nations, in UNESCO, and parents and grandparents need to actively be on the alert and training their children to understand what's really going on, because in 1933 the Humanist Manifesto came out, the first one, and here's a statement from UNESCO from 1949. As long as the child breathes the poisoned air of nationalism, education and world-mindedness can produce only rather precarious results. That's one of the statements in this paragraph. The other is, the school should therefore use the means described earlier to combat family attitudes. That's being really pushed from UNESCO, United Nations. It's infiltrated in our educational system. In America, it goes back as far as Horace Mann from 1796 to 1859, and then in 1859, John Dewey stepped into his place. So we've got a battle that's had roots going on for so many years. So that's why this hatred for Donald Trump, make America great again, from those who claim it was never great because they hate our Constitution, they hate the nationalism of America, they hate our motto, in God we trust, or one nation under God. So it's a huge battle, and that's why it's going on, and what we can do about it. Be very careful that we are training our children to understand what's really going on and what is the true nature and background of our nation.
Well, Rick, we thank you for that scouting report. We appreciate your insight, brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Out to Jeff Manasso, Fox News Radio. Good morning, Jeff.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
Good to have you with us. So where's the beef?
Hopefully not in your freezer, and if it is, you're supposed to toss it or take it back for a refund. 30,000 pounds of ground beef products from Washington beef product have now been recalled over fears that it's contaminated with plastic and metal. Recalled products that include two types of Double R Ranch 100% ground beef, several types of St. Helens 100% ground beef, Double R Ranch coarse beef chubs, and smoked boneless ground beef chuck blend. The beef products produced December 27th, 2018, and include a use or freeze-by date of January 20th, 2019, and distributed nationwide. The contamination was first reported to Washington beef by a consumer back on February 28th, though we're told there have been no reports of illness.
Indeed, that's a massive amount, though.
It's a lot of food. Yeah, it's a lot of product, and the recall is a Class 1 recall, which is the most severe recall. Class 1 denotes a health hazard situation where there is a reasonable probability that the use of the product could cause serious and adverse health consequences or even death. So I'm not sure what kind of metal, what kind of plastic. It sounds to me, if I were to speculate, I would say it's probably the production process that that these materials got into the beef, but I don't know. But it's not safe to eat. And so if you have this, check your freezers and toss it or take it back to the store for a refund.
Boy, you think about this. This is, it goes back to Upton Sinclair's The Jungle when you find out what's in the meat or what isn't in the meat.
Well, I think America has, the federal government has a pretty rigorous, safety protocol as it pertains to the production of food in this country. And these kind of recalls aren't, they don't happen all the time. So we have a pretty safe process in terms of how we get food and how it's produced in this country. But sometimes things happen, and thus the need for a recall like we see today.
Jeff Manasso, I guess that's pretty much it with the story there. We can't really go any further except could we repeat it one more time, please?
Yeah, so it's products from Washington Beef Product and two types of Double R Ranch, 100% ground beef, several types of St. Helens, 100% ground beef, Double R Ranch coarse beef chubs, and smoked boneless ground beef chuck blend that are being recalled. It is products that were manufactured December 27th with a use or freeze by date of January 20th of 2019.
Double R Ranch, big name around here, so.
Not here. To be honest with you, I'd never heard of it, and I'd never heard of St. Helens either. So it's not that it's not shipped here in the Midwest, but this stuff is shipped nationally. It's all across the country. I just never heard of it. So if it's big there, all the more reason to take a look at your freezer.
Indeed. Jeff Manasso, thank you, sir.
You bet. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We go to Pro-Life, who joins us now with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life.
Well, our food safety, the FDA, they have veterinarians that go to the meatpacking plants and they examine this. They make sure that things are being processed right. But they don't go back into the growing of those cattle and everything, the food conditions of what they're eating. And they're eating a bunch of chemicals, and so this had metal and plastic in the meat processing. Well, that's not the most dangerous part of it. It's the chemicals that in our food, fruits, vegetables, meats, whatever. We have a very chemical agricultural system, and it's making us unhealthy. It's hurting us, but our government does not screen for that.
Well, you have a lot of people that like to eat meat, though.
Yeah, of course they do. But you can get organic meat, which is no chemicals whatsoever in it.
Well, that's what they say.
No, it has to be. There's inspectors that come out. I'm an organic farmer. I know about that.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah, of course, somebody could lie and maybe even get away with it, but they'd get busted, sooner or later. I mean, us organic farmers, we bust each other if they're...
What do you mean you bust each other?
I mean, we tell on each other if somebody's lying and using chemicals. You can't do that.
Really? You tattle on each other?
Of course, you have to.
Wow.
If somebody's harming somebody's health, you got to say something about it. That's why our food system is messed up, and I'm blowing the whistle on the whole chemical food system.
Well, you're blowing the whistle right here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, I'm the referee. I'm saying no more of this chemical food. Just go organic. That's what I'm saying.
You sound like Tea Party Bob.
Well, he's right. Tea Party's Bob usually is right about things.
I see. Usually right, not always right.
Yeah, well, he differs from me, so he can't be totally right.
Exactly.
Well, God bless you, Kevin.
Well, God
and Jeff
bless
Manasso
you
for bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that people should be aware of, especially in this area.
Yep. All right, well, we hope we get good callers today. But
God bless you, Pro-Life.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you. Here's an inspirational story coming out of the state of Georgia. It really hits home for people that contribute, that donate, that adopt rescue animals that make a big difference, whether you're with the Meridian Canine Rescue, whether you're at the West Valley Humane Society, the old Canyon County Animal Shelter, whether or not you're at the Idaho Humane Society, whether you're not at the cat place. People that rescue animals really make a big difference, whether or not you're, the Wings of Rescue, that you fly out and you rescue animals like our friend Ryan DeLuca does. That unconditional love that you get from animals is clearly something that is immeasurable. Here's a great story coming out of the state of Georgia on KIDO Talk Radio.
About 700 Lhasa Apsos, Chihuahuas, and other small dogs found living in horrible conditions, covered with their own waste at a property in Valdosta, Georgia.
Metal crates, kennels stacked on top of each other with just multiple dogs in each one.
Tim Hill of the Valdosta Humane Society.
A homeowner, I believe, loved the animals, but the situation got so out of control that the sheer numbers he couldn't handle any longer.
The owner finally called the Department of Agriculture for help. Now, several rescue groups are working to get the animals medical attention, grooming, and hopefully into loving homes. Jill Nato, Fox News.
There we have it. You know, on our list of things to do in the state of Idaho, we talk about animal cruelty laws that, what was it, 4, 5, 6 years ago, if you're new to the state, or if you remember this, they came within, 10,000 votes of getting a referendum on the ballot. Maybe they did get a referendum on the ballot that would strengthen Idaho's animal laws. And incrementally, you have the legislature kind of doing that, but you have so many horrific stories going on across the country where people, and I suppose there are people that are good breeders and everything else, but I mean, sending animals through the mail, you get your dog in the mail, and the mail, they try to do things great, but sending dogs and cats through the mail can't be good for the dog or the cat. And then you have the plane issues and everything else. So if you're involved in rescue, man, thank you for all that you do. Really, I'm amazed. The other day I was at the Old Canyon County Animal Shelter, just walking around, seeing pets being adopted, that sort of thing. And let's do what we can to make sure all of our shelters here in the Treasure Valley are not kill shelters, right? That all these dogs and cats are rescued because they really rescue us. They really make a difference. Coming up next, we turn back to people that want to go after the president. And as he says, the presidential harassment, the president derangement syndrome. Of course, I still love it when he calls it the collusion delusion. President Trump on the campaign trail, fired up even as Congress, led by the Democrats in the House, are trying to derail his presidency. First it was the Russians, then it was the Muslim ban, then it was the wall. Who knows what's next? You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Fox News has obtained a draft of the House anti-Semitism resolution. While it doesn't mention Congresswoman Ilhan Omar by name, it does take aim at her most recent controversial comments regarding dual loyalty, the idea that Jewish Americans are more loyal to Israel than to the U.S. Remarks fellow Democrat and chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Eliot Engel, have called vile and anti-Semitic. President Trump also tweeting late Monday, the comments are terrible and a dark day for Israel. However, Omar says she has not mischaracterized the U.S.-Israel relationship and finds it problematic that she has been called anti-American for her views. In Washington, Sean Lanchel, Fox News.
And there we have it. Again, no reporting from the national press outside of Fox News Radio and KIDO Talk Radio. You have this openly avowed, very young lady who's a congressman. She's a Muslim, not down with the people of Israel, not down with a lot of folks, already having been forced to apologize once. And yet here we have this story not being covered by the media, not being covered by folks, and yet a congressman says one thing, and all of a sudden, what? Boom, bam, booey. It's a big news if they're a Republican. It shows you, once again, the bias of the media. That's one. Number two, our top local story that we've been covering all day long. We took a little sabbatical from it. This issue involving, well, the transgendered inmate. You heard about this? We first brought it to you, seems like years ago, by the name of Edmo. Born a man, identifies as a woman, has petitioned the state for gender reassignment surgery. Going to cost about $50,000. Thankfully, the state of Idaho said, nope, we're not paying for it. They took it to court. There's supposed to be a June 13th hearing. Well, lo and behold, here comes Judge Windmill. Judge Windmill doesn't win a lot of fans when we're talking about the pro-life movement here in Idaho. Judge Windmill, in fact, probably not a favorite amongst many conservative folks. Judge Windmill says, does it really matter about this hearing? You're going to lose. The state of Idaho is going to lose. So I don't really care. You're going to start this surgery now, which to me pretty much derails the idea of due process here in the Gem State, which to me derails any, motivation to go to court. if you're going to lose anyway, if the fix is in. And by the way, Edmo is not the first or last, maybe the first, but not the last. There's, as we first reported on this a while ago, like 20 or 30 folks in the state system that are looking to get gender reassignment surgery. I would assume, a very painful process. And one would argue, well, Kevin Miller, imagine being a man identifying as a woman in an all-male prison. And now part of Edmo's lawsuit, as reported by our friends at Channel 7, is that Edmo, identifying as a woman, is a man, wants to dress up as a woman, but can't do it, so that amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Oh, my gosh. Kind of like mental cruelty in divorce cases. Anything could be construed as mental cruelty, but I don't believe it's cruel and unusual punishment. There are many people that you know that have been to the poke, maybe to the jail, maybe for violent crimes, maybe for not violent crimes. What do? If you're not in a good, safe position, they put you in solitary confinement. They protect you from yourself. They protect you from the majority population. Why can't they do that with Edmo? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And when we take a look at the money, I mean, 50 grand, that's a lot of money. 50 grand, that can almost get you a brand new pickup truck. And maybe some pickup trucks without all the bells and whistles. And we're not doing this, we're not awarding this to an individual based on merit. We're awarding it to an individual based on being a convicted criminal, incarcerated, a ward of the state. Because we have a federal judge that has a bias, in my opinion, against the state of Idaho. Now, again, we respect the authority of the bench. We may not agree with it, but let's be clear, we respect Judge Windmill. We don't agree with his decision. But think about this. Here you have this situation. And by the way, it's not as if Edmo is in custody for, petty larceny. We're talking about abusing children. We're talking about assault, which is very different from anything else. So, again, here's where I'm going with this. Here you have an inmate who has committed a crime, been convicted of a crime, property of the Idaho Department of Corrections, wanting to get gender reassignment surgery because they say gender dysphoria is so severe that they want to harm themselves. And Judge Windmill ruled that the state's denial of the surgery amounted to cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment, and said Edmo proved that Edmo had a serious medical need and failure to treat would result in significant injury or unnecessary pain. Well, what about the victim of the crime? Do we forget about that? Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio.
Investor Pro.
Thank you very much. Now, going back to this case, we have this issue involving Judge Windmill referring to Edmo's history of twice trying to remove, their own appendage using a razor blade in the cell, saying he feared that Edmo could try again, in short, to do that once again. Now, it's interesting. In January, the Idaho Department of Correction asked the Ninth Circuit for extra time to file their opening brief to the appellate case, and the circuit court agreed. The vaunted Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The state now has until March 6th to take that step, and Edmo's attorneys have until April 6th to file their own brief. Idaho's attorneys could then potentially file another brief, kicking the process out another 21 days. But even if the state chooses not to file that second brief, boy, that's why I guess you need an attorney. It's so darn confusing. That would still leave just under 10 weeks for the appeal to be decided until the state's June 13th deadline. Again, it's amazing to me when people say that we are not a compassionate society, that we have a person born as a man, convicted of a crime, getting more consideration than one could say the victim of that crime. We're very concerned about the inmate. We're very concerned about what they're dealing with. What about the victim? What do they have to say? We'll talk about it next. Thanks for waking up on the right side. Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.